What happens when the outrage machine finally gets challenged, live, on air, with nowhere to hide? Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. So here's the setup, and trust me, it's a good one. On Chris Cuomo's show, things got very interesting when he brought on Sean Spicer, a longtime defender of Trump-era messaging, for what was supposed to be a conversation about rhetoric. Now, if you've been paying attention lately, you already know the script. But Cuomo wasn't just going to sit there and nod along. Because beneath all the noise, the whining, the pearl-clutching, the endless talk about civility, there's a bigger question lurking: who is actually driving the temperature up? And that's exactly what this segment starts to unpack. To make things even more interesting, Geraldo Rivera was also in the mix, which means you've got three strong personalities, three very different perspectives, and zero chance this stays polite for long. What you're about to see isn't just a debate, it's a clash of narratives. And once it gets going, and it doesn't hold back.
Sean, when you have an administration that puts out what this guy puts out and says what he says, it makes people angry. It does. What do you mean, no?
You're angry. He was praised for finally having some balls.
Man, you should see how my phone is lighting up. How can you say the president said the right thing? You don't think it was the right thing to say, we were all in there, there was a lot of unity, people came together, it didn't matter about party? That's exactly the right message. The problem is it's not his only message, right? Today, we saw what we see most often, which is his White House press secretary, who's very good at the job, but that's not necessarily a compliment, saying this.
Rep. Hakeem Jeffries just this month, said, "We are in an era of maximum warfare everywhere all the time." Governor Josh Shapiro said heads need to roll. Monica McIver, a Democrat representative on Capitol Hill, "We will not take this shit from Donald Trump. He thinks he's a dictator. We are at war." These are Democrat elected officials calling for war against the president of the United States and his supporters. I could go on and on, but again, when you have people in positions of power that are saying things like this every single day for years, you are inspiring violence by people who are already mentally ill.
But you're not one of them. I mean, look, to me, the irony is just disgusting here, but that's what gets rewarded. There is no shame in this game. So let's discuss where this leaves us. News Nation correspondent at large, Mr. Geraldo Rivera,
hello.
Former White House press secretary in the first Trump administration, Mr. Sean Spicer. Good to have you both. Oh, Sean's got a new book out, by the way, called Trump 2.0. Sean, Geraldo, good to have you. Geraldo goes first because he's sitting next to me, Sean. You got the proximity advantage.
If I would have come to New York, if I knew that.
Oh, it would have been a fun party.
I'll have you one on each side. And be like, So, Geraldo, I was hopeful that, thank God, nobody got hurt here, and that maybe having all these bold-faced names in one place with the could have been me would change. We got to do something different. This is no good. Nothing like that came out of it.
I feel so badly that you're so hurt by it because I care for you as my friend and mentee over the years. And, I think that you've done a great job. But I think that sometimes idealism gets pushed aside, as it should, in favor of pragmatism. For example, Rand Paul, notoriously stingy in terms of spending public money. He just voted in terms of the White House ballroom in favor of it. It's an 8-1 vote. Now, why not get together on something practical like that? You hate each other. You know that ideologically speaking, you'll never the twain shall meet. You know that you think you're morally superior, not you. I mean, in the.
I know I'm morally inferior. That's why I try to keep it amoral.
I think that it'd be better just to be pragmatic about it. Be pragmatic idealists. You want something to happen, make it happen.
But you're right. But pragmatically, Sean, you wind up right where you are. We all know about what DJT 100 was supposed to be about, right? It was this ambition of, let me see how many people on both sides I can get to like what I'm about in this administration. But this works better. This dividing works better, and it's easier. And that's what gets rewarded within the parties and online by the algorithms. Why would you try anything else?
Yeah, respectfully, as a friend and a mentee as well, I disagree. It's not just reward, it's factual. I mean, look, I don't like to use events like this to score points, and I get maybe in that way we agree. But the reality is that Caroline was absolutely right. I mean, look, these guys are the first ones to point fingers. For Barack Obama, the president of the United States, to put out a tweet and say, we have no idea what the political leanings of this person are, his motivations, is patently false. The guy wrote a manifesto that was very clear about what his motivations were and what his intent was. So when we get gaslit, and Chris, I know that you and your family have been involved in politics, so I'm sure this might resonate with you as well, but I've dealt with that vitriol. I've had people come to my house. I've had people make threats.
Too.
And so I know, that's why I'm saying I think you identify with this this as well. But Geraldo's the only one that people just love. So maybe he doesn't get this the same way. But look, here's the thing.
Because I've been around for 100 years.
I think that you can say what you will about the president's rhetoric, right? And there's things that he said that I don't fully agree with or how he expresses himself. Got it. But at the end of the day, Caroline was right. When you tell someone that they are a threat to democracy, a threat to this country, a threat over and over again, what do you think is going to happen? People are finally going to say, well, if that's a threat, I need to get rid of the threat.
You're right about half of it. And I'll say it this way, and I'll put it to Geraldo.
That's better than I did in high school, Chris.
But hold on. If you switch the R and the D, and this was Joe Biden who says the things that Donald Trump says on a regular basis about you, about me, about immigrants, about any group, put it in. They would go crazy. Sean's head would explode. But he's very mild because it's about Trump. Levitt is right about half of it, not all of it. And that's why nothing changes.
I feel
here's
badly
the point.
that you're...
Look, can I just ask this? Can you guys just agree, though, there's a difference between mocking somebody and saying that they're a horrible person and whatever, and telling someone that they should be eliminated? Like, there's a difference to me.
Wait a second.
Nobody's saying he should be eliminated.
You saw the two sides to Donald Trump on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday night, when he came back after the traumatic event, he was magnanimous. He was inclusive. He was wonderful. And I said, wow, this may be something that will cause a new President Trump. And then the next day with Norah O'Donnell, he practically called her a slut and, a disgrace and a horrible person and this and that. I mean, things that you would never think.
And this is where the conversation really takes a turn, because suddenly the word gaslighting gets thrown into the mix. Now think about that for a second. Sean Spicer is trying to frame Democrats, or the left or progressives, pick your label, as the ones distorting reality, that they're the ones misleading the public, that somehow they're the source of all this confusion and division. But here's the problem with that argument. It immediately runs into a wall of its own contradictions. Because over the past decade, critics argue we've seen a completely different pattern, one where reality itself feels like it's constantly being rewritten depending on the moment. And at the center of that storm is Donald Trump, a figure who has built an entire political identity around provocative language, sharp attacks, and statements that keep pushing the boundaries of what's considered acceptable in public discourse. And yet, listen closely, when that gets pointed out, the response isn't reflection. It's denial. It's this insistence that nothing inflammatory is ever said, that any criticism is exaggerated, that somehow it's all being twisted by the other side. That's where the frustration starts boiling over. Because people remember the rhetoric. They remember phrases that painted opponents as threats, as enemies, even as something less than human. They remember moments that didn't exactly lower the temperature, they raised it. So when you hear someone confidently say, no, it's actually the other side doing all the gaslighting, it doesn't land as a neutral point. It lands as something else entirely, like a complete reversal of what many viewers feel they've been watching play out in real time. And that's why the reaction here isn't calm disagreement. It's disbelief, because at some point the question stops being who said what and becomes something much bigger.
Real life to call anyone. But knowing him as long as I know him, hold it a second. Knowing him as long as I've known him, I reconcile myself. That's who he is. He's mercurial. He's thin-skinned. He's entitled and aggrieved. And those are things that he is.
Imagine what your wife would say if you had talked like that in an interview.
Oh, my God, she wouldn't.
Man,
but there's a difference.
She would give me the cold shoulder to beat the bear.
All right, go ahead. Time in. What do you got?
I'm just saying, like, look, I think that calling somebody a jerk or disgusting or whatever, okay, yes, I don't generally speak like that, but that's a very different thing than saying someone is a threat to the country and a threat to democracy.
He calls
I want to get rid of
a
threats.
threat to the country and democracy all the time, Sean.
And just when you think the argument has reached its peak, it doubles down. Because now the claim isn't just that the left is wrong, it's that they're deliberately manipulating reality, that they're the ones gaslighting the public. And again, you hear that word being used with total confidence by Sean Spicer, as if repeating it enough somehow settles the debate. But here's where the tension really explodes. Critics look at the last decade and see something completely different. They see a political environment shaped heavily by Donald Trump, a figure whose communication style has never exactly been subtle, careful, or restrained. It's bold, it's confrontational, and at times it's undeniably provocative. And that's the core of the pushback. Because when people hear the argument that there's no inflammatory rhetoric coming from that side, that it's all exaggerated, all invented, all some grand illusion, it doesn't just sound unconvincing. It sounds disconnected from what they've watched unfold in real time. We're talking about language that has framed opponents as dangerous, as enemies, as people who are supposedly destroying the country. That kind of rhetoric doesn't just disappear because someone waves it away in a debate. So when defenders step in and act like none of that exists, like it's all perfectly normal, perfectly harmless, it forces viewers into a moment of disbelief. Not mild disagreement, not polite pushback. Disbelief, not mild disagreement, not polite pushback. Disbelief. Because at that point, the conversation isn't even happening on the same playing field anymore. One side is pointing to specific patterns, specific statements, specific moments, and the other is trying to rewrite how those moments are remembered. And that's where the frustration boils over. Because if everything can be dismissed, reframed, or denied, then what exactly are we debating anymore? At some point, people stop arguing over opinions and start questioning whether the same reality is even being acknowledged.
Enough time to list it, and you know this, and you're right. People speak about him in a way.
It's funny, Chris, because
that it would be nice
all
if
the
they
assassination
didn't.
attempts seem to go in one direction.
He's in
Right?
power.
It's Charlie Kirk, it's Donald Trump 3 times, it's Steve Scalise.
He's
I'm
in
just
power.
Saying, you
He's in
notice that
power.
every one of these people in the Trump administration needs a security deal, staff. No other press secretary in history, except for those who served.
Do you believe that the animus directed towards this administration has nothing to do with what the administration directs towards the people?
I don't know that there's an equivalence. Sometimes the language is inflammatory. But there's a difference when the Democrats in power tell you that there's a threat and they must be eliminated.
But where did it come from, Sean?
But why don't you compromise, Chris, and say you're for the ballroom? The guy should have a Purple Heart. He's been the victim of assassination attempts 3 times. The ballroom makes sense pragmatically.
I don't care.
Suggests that he's
I don't care about
he's right.
the ballroom.
Maybe he's right about that.
The idea that we're talking
But
about.
if you don't care about it, why don't you say you're for it? Or you're okay with it?
Because I'm okay with it. I don't care about the ballroom. You know, people aren't looking for me what I'm okay with, what I'm not. What I'm not okay with matters more, which is we're going to talk about whether a ballroom is the solution. Not that you have another mentally ill person who is able to get access to a weapon and get inside and try to commit a mass act of violence. But we won't discuss any of that. But a ballroom is the fix.
Caltech. I mean, this guy it's an intriguing story. I'll admit that. It's a
mentally ill.
Had a guy go from being an honor engineer,
he has a mental illness,
to this kind of breakdown.
But you don't. But stupid and sick do not, can be reconciled.
People have their own demons. You know, it's hard to reconcile that any one stimulus is why. What's the catalyst? Why did this person become a crazy person? You talked about
wait, they were
the massacre of the children up in Connecticut.
Yeah, but hold on, Sean. You want to say we know from the manifesto why he did it, and you're right. But since when do we start reading these manifestos from someone who's obviously deranged as proof of premise?
But the question, Chris, here's my point,
That's
though.
a good point.
It's why. When he is told over and over again why. When the Democratic Party tells people that violence is okay. When the CEO of United Health can be killed in cold blood.
I'm with you.
And they set up a defense fund for Luigi Mangione.
Sean, it's all wrong. But
No,
Sean,
Didn't Gavin Newsom do it?
Sean, when you have an administration that puts out what this guy puts out and says what he says, it makes people angry. It does. What do you mean, no?
You're angry,
He was praised for finally having some balls.
Be angry, be pissed off, but violence is never acceptable, ever, full stop. And there's no equivocating. There's no, they might be angry.
I agree.
No, never, never.
I know, Sean, but it's the problem is you guys only say
Preaching
that.
to the choir.
You only say that when it's about the other side being the problem, never when it's you as the problem.
No. Do you know what? Here's the deal. I've said this for every circumstance. Violence is never, ever the answer. Okay. You think about this. How many people on the left set up a defense fund for Luigi Mangione that hit 7 figures? Because why did no one say anything during the BLM riots and destruction? Because violence is always going to be acceptable to folks on the left if it's in pursuit of a greater good. They do nothing to call it out. Right?
What about Stephen Miller in that language and that incendiary language?
I mean, we have heard more ugly things out of this administration, but you make the right point, which is the one that I practiced.
Ugly is different than threats. Ugly is different.
Look, he started the chance of lock her up. And he says, come on, it's not even a close call. But what I'm saying is this.
Lock her up is not killing.
I'm fine with saying there should be no violence. Yeah, I know. So stop inspiring it. That's the point. What I'm saying is you and I disagree. You and I disagree, right? But I would never threaten you personally. I would never say what we hear all the time here that, hey, Sean, I've gotten tired of you cutting me off and wiping your face. When I see you, I'm going to untwist your head like a bottle cap. I don't do that. Why? I would never want anybody
I've heard you a couple of times.
But very rare. And I get upset at myself for doing
Chris,
that.
maybe you have.
I know. Look, I know it's the wrong thing to do. I know it's the wrong thing to do. And I don't think there are enough people in power who feel that way. That's my point. Trump 2.0 is Sean Spicer's new book. You're always welcome here to make the case. I wish you nothing but good things.
Thank you.
We can disagree, not disagreeable. You could never hurt me. Geraldo.
brother.
I know.
You could hurt me, but I love it. Take care. 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
And by the time this segment wraps up, one thing becomes very clear. This wasn't just another routine political back and forth. It exposed a much deeper frustration with how these conversations are even happening. Because here's the reality. You don't have to agree with Chris Cuomo on everything to recognize when he's making a grounded point. And in this exchange, he wasn't playing the usual, both sides are equally to blame game. He was doing something a lot of commentators avoid, actually drawing a line and saying, no, responsibility isn't always evenly split. And that's what made this moment stand out. Cuomo essentially pushed back against the idea that all rhetoric is created equal, that every harsh word carries the same weight, no matter who says it or how often it's repeated. Instead, he pointed to a pattern, a tone, a style of communication that has defined the political era shaped by Donald Trump. Now, whether you support Trump or not, you can't seriously argue that his rhetoric has been conventional. It's disruptive. It's aggressive. It's designed to dominate headlines and provoke reactions. That's not an accident. It's strategy. But here's where the debate turns into something else entirely. Because when Sean Spicer tries to dismiss that reality outright, when he acts as if there's nothing unusual, nothing escalatory, nothing worth acknowledging, it creates a credibility gap that's hard to ignore. And Cuomo clearly felt it. You could hear the frustration building. Not just disagreement, but genuine exasperation at what he sees as a refusal to engage honestly with the facts on the ground. It's like trying to have a serious conversation while one side keeps moving the goalposts. And then there's the comparison that quietly lingers in the background. Figures like Barack Obama being brought into the same conversation. For some viewers, that contrast only highlights how different these communication styles really are, and why the debate over rhetoric feels so charged in the first place. But maybe the most revealing part of all this is the contradiction. Because you often hear two completely opposing claims at the same time, that political opponents are weak and ineffective, but also somehow dangerously powerful and constantly pushing chaos. And when those narratives collide, they don't exactly line up. That's what Cuomo was trying to point out. Not in a polished, rehearsed way, but in real time, with visible frustration as the conversation unfolded. And that's where we are right now in political discourse. Not just arguing over opinions, but arguing over what's even real, what counts as accountability, and who's willing to admit when lines have been crossed. So now it comes down to you. Do you think Cuomo got it right in calling this out? Or do you think Spicer's argument holds up under scrutiny? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this debate isn't going anywhere anytime soon.